of the neighbors, I guess, took offense to that and mentioned it to the county. So he got cited, and they're working through that, but it's substantial fines. And so what's the proper way to put that to bed?
The proper way to put that to bed is either to move the shed outside the setbacks. It's probably up against one of the property lines, or it has electricity run to it if there's a pool there. The proper way is to either remove the shed and hope maybe the code officer's happy with that, and you bring the property into compliance that way, and if there's fines, you could get to reducing them that way.
You need a demolition permit for that?
Depending on the code officer. So for example, they will ask for a demolition permit, especially if there's electrical going to that shed. A lot of the situations, backyards, pools. So there's two things, there's two prongs to what you're asking. There's zoning, which is the city's law of setbacks and what you could do with a property and where you could do it. And then there's the building code. So the building code might say the shed is, the electric's done illegally, it's not tied down properly, it could blow in a hurricane and be in the neighbor's backyard. And then there's the zoning code that every city has that says what your setbacks are going to be, what your lot coverage is. So there's those two things. But a lot of times I get brought into these situations, the shed's not in the place it is, it's a piece of junk. And we usually remove them, but you're doing a refinance, which is just like a closing anyway. You got to pull a lien search, you got to do everything. In the event it's a buyer-seller transaction and the property's being conveyed, you now have a buyer under contract who bought a house with a shed. So then the circumstances change and negotiation needs to be done. Do we permit the shed after the fact? Are we able to permit the shed? What if the city doesn't allow sheds of that height? What if the structure's in disrepair? So we could have what's called a non-conforming use, which is just a fancy name for something I can't permit, something you can't legalize. And so
your office will come in, assess the situation, and then either you want to keep it, you use your options and take it from there.
Absolutely.
From soup to nuts.
From soup to nuts, the evaluation, the permit expediting, the inspections, basically being on the property for inspections, or sometimes I'm just called to do an inspection and evaluate so the seller can credit the buyer some money and they get to the closing table that way. But that all depends on, what the violation is. That depends on underwriting of the mortgage. That depends on underwriting of the title. So everything is a different situation and falls under a different scope. But yes, I work on, refinances are closings. Another bank is taking the mortgage over. So a lien search is pulled at those times too.